Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel. I'm the founder and CEO of the Behavior University, a blog at Karim.com about psychology, and I'm the host of the Psychology Podcast. In this video, it's going to be a Q&A about some of the informed questions that you guys have sent me either per mail at hello@karim.com or under my social media channels. Some of these questions were sent to me not for the first time, and I felt it could provide some value with you if I make a video so that you can answer them. Firstly, that I can answer them at a bunch, but also that maybe other people had the same questions but didn't felt courageous enough to reach out. So I hope this video will provide some value and that you maybe find something interesting here, and maybe one or two questions will remind you of a particular challenge that you have in your own life that maybe can open you up to how I would give you advice if you would be one of the people in my private practice or one of the people on my social media channels. So let's go. Of course, I've changed all the names from the questions that you sent me for obvious reasons. So if in the future there is something you feel that you want to have my perspective on, rest assured that you're I will treat the information with a sense of privacy. Okay, here we go. First question. Hi Daniel, my name is Jamie and I'm 35 years old. I was hoping you could help me understand my obsessive compulsive disorder. I've been struggling with it for as long as I can remember, and it's becoming unbearable. I can't seem to break free from my compulsions, and they are starting to rule my life. Can you help me work through this and find a way to overcome my OCD? I think there are many ways in which you could see this particular challenge, and I think first and foremost I would advise you to not see this particular compulsion as something that is exclusive to you. All bad habits that exist have a compulsive nature in regards that you feel an impulse that triggers you, basically, that you listen to, that you do something that isn't aligned with the best of yourself, like a bad habit or a bad cognitive thought, for example. So this is the first thing I would like to tell you. It's like you are not alone with this. There are many people who have bad habits, or maybe all of us. We all have our compulsions, so maybe you swap your sense of shame in regards to this particular challenge for a sense of curiosity and ask yourself, if other people have a similar challenge, maybe it's not something that I am, in which regard you see yourself as an OCDer or something like this, but just like a wrong set of habit that you accidentally collected over the years. One of the things that I just had an idea about that could be helpful in this case is tell you about a little story that I heard from the first book about habit formation that I ever read. It was From the Power of Habit, which was written by Charles Duhigg, a journalist who wrote, from my estimation, a great book about the topic that can be helpful for you. And in this book he had a pretty cute story that could be useful to you. He noticed after some time as a journalist that in his breaks he would, or while walking, he would notice this compulsion within himself to take a break in order to have some cookies or eat some sugary stuff, and as a consequence he gained a lot of weight, which was draining on his self-esteem. And over the course, when he started to figure out how to defeat this particular habit of his, he wrote down what this habit was giving him. And what he noticed was that he wasn't actually craving sugar, but that he felt an inner trigger for eating cookies when he needed a break. Basically, he conditioned himself to eat some cookies, but the rewarding emotion at the end was really that he just needed to, he was bored, or he wanted to have some relaxation, or just do something different in that regard. And one of the things he tried that he later called the golden rule of habit formation was that it was possible for him that when he would sense the craving for cookies, that he could translate this and install a different habit that would give him the same reward that the other habit was trying to give him. So instead of eating cookies and gaining weight and becoming a fat fuck, so to say, he instead got up and started to talk to some co-workers to create some connection, but also to have a little break from whatever it is that he was doing. And that seemed to work for him. And the golden rule of habit formation is basically you keep the trigger, which means in your case, for example, you want to order this particular desk that is in front of you right now, but you resist the urge to do something and instead do something different that gives you the same kind of reward. And to give you an example of how many people use this, for example, it's my father for a while, for instance, wanted to quit smoking. That's actually a bad example because he never really did quit smoking cigars. But there was a time where he tried to, and in that time it was effective to him. And every time he felt the urge to smoke a cigar, like he was stressed, that was his trigger. He wanted to stop the cessation of escaping the stress with his routine of smoking. He chose a different habit, which in his case was to eat some fruit. And he would eat tons of fruits in that particular time of his life, because it would also see some of the stress that he had, but it wasn't giving him the bad negative side consequences. So that might be useful to you, is to write down what is the trigger, what is the particular routine, what is the reward that is giving you. Maybe it's giving you some sense of control over your life, or some sense of that you feel oriented properly in a way. And then you can find a different kind of routine that would help you to do so. And another thing that I want to give you as an advice is two things actually. The one thing is measure precisely how often you have this particular habit, and write down every time you engage in like one of your, what you describe as OCD, like write down how many times per day, how many times per week you succumb to the temptation of giving in to that particular urge, so that you actually know if you are making progress or not. A different kind of technique that I feel is extremely effective in this regard, that I've used in the past with other clients of mine who have compulsive behaviors or thoughts, is a psychoanalytic technique in which you take a piece of paper like this one right here, and you treat that particular bad habit, that particular emotional state, as if it was a distinct entity that resides within you, like a persona, so to say. So what you could do is you give that particular OCD mode of being that you obviously seem to have in you a name, and treat it as if it would be something that is distinct from you, so that when these urges overcome you, you can negotiate with that particular sense of temptation as if that was a real person, because you know how to negotiate a person. You can talk to that particular person and say, I understand you want to do this right now, but this is what it is costing me, this is why we're not doing, this is what we will do instead. And you have this little internal conversation with you like a crazy person, and you can end up using Socratic dialogues, preset questions that you can ask yourself, like, Is it okay if I wait? What will this turn me into if I preserve that particular habit? Or is there something else that I can do right now that is giving me the same sense of satisfaction? In that case, you pretty much learn how to diffuse those kinds of thoughts that can pop up and regain control over yourself. I've had tremendous success for myself with this in regards to a lot of bad habits that I have, from substance abuse to gluttony, or to, I don't know, excessive dating, or whatever stuff that I had that wasn't wrong with me. So that's always a good thing that you can use, is to personalize that particular mode of being of yours, give it a name, define precisely what words does that particular part of you use, what are the arguments, and how can you diffuse and counter these kind of arguments when they are giving you. For example, you are at a supermarket and you are dealing with your inner gluten, like the thing that wants to eat and eat and eat in order to gain security, and right before you're about to eat the cookies, you can call it by its name and say, yes, I understand you want to have a sense of satisfaction for today, but this is what it's costing me. Would you be okay if I do this instead? And then you sell yourself basically on a new set of behaviors. So I hope this was helpful. Do I have an exercise for this? There's an exercise called Fraser's Table on the Behavior University, in which you do exactly that, in which you converse with your problematic modes of being. I will highly recommend that you go over to this particular exercise and do it. I think it will help you. So let me move to the next question. Okay. Hey, I've been going through a tough time with depression lately. Can you share a story about how you've coped with it in the past? Many, actually. I would go even so far to say as I wouldn't be sitting in front of you as the owner of a personal development platform if I wouldn't have been, if I wouldn't have had depressive episodes over the course of my life many times that actually pushed me in that particular direction. And one story that came to my mind right now was that could be useful to you. No, actually, I'm not going to tell this story. And instead, I'm going to give you some advice. I think in my mid-20s, I had a very rough stretch in my life. I was oriented towards hedonism. I was drinking a lot. I was partying a lot. I was a shitty boyfriend. I just got kicked out of university, and that wasn't really something that was going on for me in my life. And that's also when I discovered some very bad habits, like I don't know, like alcohol and stuff, that helped me to get out of it. And in that particular time, I really thought I was depressed, and I was also going to a psychotherapist who basically diagnosed me as depressed, and they were giving me medicine in order to, like antidepressants, in order to get out of it. But what I noticed in that particular time of my life was that I wasn't really depressed. I was having a shit life. I didn't have any money. Like my relationship was about to fall off. My career was a disaster. Like I was failing on all fronts there. The people around me all had drug problems and were bringing forth the worst out of me. So in that time, it wasn't really that I had a mental disease, but rather that my emotional systems signaled to me that the life that I have wasn't worth keeping on anymore. So a couple piece of advice that I can give you is differentiate between whether or not you have a mental illness or whether or not you just have a shitty life. Because if it's the first one, antidepressants seem to be working very well. However, if your life is broken, there's no kind of antidepressants that gets you out of that. But what you need is actually to ask yourself under what kinds of circumstances you feel not depressed anymore, in regards to what kind of life would you have to architect so that the needs that you have as a human being would be satisfied. Okay, next question. I will try to be a bit more brief in this regard. Hey, I've been going through a tough time with depression lately. Can you share a story about how you've coped with it in the past? Um, Many stories, actually. Many stories. I'm trying to think of one that is useful to you right now. I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm going to give you a set of questions that you might ask yourself. There was a time in my life where I was diagnosed with depression, and where I also thought I would have a mental illness because I was just sad, miserable all the time. I couldn't get out of bed anymore. I think it was in my mid-20s or something. I was struggling with addiction and alcoholism, and I wasn't really doing well in my career. I had no money, and the people around me, they were all bringing out the worst in me. They were all addicts in one form or another. I was lying to people. I was an asshole who was living a very pathetic life. And when I went to a doctor in that time, I cut. Alright, let's go to the next question. I will try to be a bit more brief in this one. Hey, I've been going through a tough time with depression lately. Can you share a story about how you've coped with it in the past? A story of how I coped with it in the past. For me, depression is always an indicator that I kind of like to treat my emotional systems in this regard as a form of GPS who are trying to convey to me what it is about me that is not working, whether or not I'm on track or off track in regards to my own life. So what I've been doing in the past was trying to figure out when I'm depressed, what it was about my life that was in need of repair, and also about myself. And that's something that I can recommend to a lot of persons, is to do a situational analysis of your life when you're depressed before you go to a therapist, or before you take some antidepressants, because there is a chance actually that there's nothing wrong with your brain, but that your life sucks. And if your life really sucks, it is absolutely normal to not feel happy about it. In the times of my past where I was severely depressed, it was rarely the case that I was a good person, that I was aligned with the truth, that I would have people around me who wanted the best for the best part of me, like Jordan Peterson always says. I had like a lot of bad habits, and I wasn't doing very well in my career, my romantic life, and it was more that my emotional systems were trying to tell me, like, we need to make a course adjustment, and whatever you're doing is not working clearly, so it makes sense to stay in bed after we have a better plan. And I've developed a particular program for people who are depressed, which is called the Future Blueprint, in which you do pretty much define what a life would look like from which you don't have to hide from. So you define for each dimension of your life, your career, your life outside of work, your romantic life, your financial life, a vision for yourself that you combine with a master plan on how to create it. And one of the great things in regards to depression that you can do with this program, which you can find, by the way, on the behavioruniversity.com, is you can compare yourself to your vision and see how far away you are from it. And you can also ask yourself, how many dimensions of my personal life are right now on fire or are healthy? And all the times in my life when I was really depressed, it was rarely that I was doing good in the most significant dimensions of my life. So my advice would be to differentiate between depression and having a shitty life, and also like write and think on paper in regards to what the kind of life would look like if you could have it your way. I hope that would be helpful in regards to this if you would do it. Do I have a different advice? I have a different story that might be a different vantage point in this degree. I recently wrote an article about a great therapist called Merton Erickson. He He's dead for I think 20 or 30 years, and he was one of the greatest hypnotherapists of all time. And he did something. He had these unique interventions that he was doing with his clients, and there's one story that really taught me a lot about depression in regards to how you could handle it potentially. And the story goes something like this: like one of his clients, when he was in Milwaukee, talked to him that, hey, my aunt is feeling not well. Like, can you pay her a visit? You know, you're on this particular track to giving a lecture there. Maybe you can pay her a house visit. She's been very depressed and very lonely for some time, and I am worried she's gonna kill herself. And Milton Erickson, being the great guy that he was, did not call her, but made a house visit to that particular old lady. And when he arrived there and knocked at the door opened, and he just saw this lifeless old mummy of a person. And it was right away clear that there was a person who hasn't been outside for quite some while. And then he cut out. Second question, I hope I can be a bit more brief in this one. Hey, I've been going through a tough time with depression lately. Can you share a story about how you've coped with it in the past? Rather than a story, I think I would give you a question. Are you sure you're depressed in regards to you have a mental illness, or could it be that your life is shitty? Because every time in the past when I was diagnosed from professionals as depressed, it was actually my life that was in need of repair, not my brain, so to say. So before you identify yourself as sick, I would really do a situational analysis of your life, where you would discover what it is about the life that you've architected around yourself, accidentally or on purpose, that is causing you to feel this way, and also about yourself. And a great question that you can ask yourself for this is, what does a life look like from somebody who is not depressed? So that you basically discover first, well, what's a good life? And in the next session, and what's a good person in that regard as well. And then you move on to actually comparing yourself to that particular life and see where there are areas in your life on a dimensional level that announce themselves to you in need of repair. Like, do you have a relationship that is based on the truth with somebody who believes in you? Do you have a career that is meaningful, where you feel like you are uniquely creating the kind of things to the world that only you can contribute? What about your finances? How much money you have? Like, it's very difficult to be mentally happy if you are living paycheck to paycheck. If you are worried tomorrow whether or not like you're gonna eat, like that's those kind of things, like they affect your psyche. So do you have friends who believe in you, who you can count on, who hold you accountable if you slip off your personal path? Or are you maybe surrounded by either no one or by people who are compatible with the worst of you? Do you have a life outside of work? Do you have a sense of adventure in your life? And all these kind of questions you can use to figure out before you maybe start with your brain and take some medicine, or even though that could also be very helpful in order to kickstart some things. You can figure out if it might not make more sense to create a new life around you, or to dispense with who you are, to reinvent yourself to a degree where you can tailor-make a life around you that would be the answer to your investigation of what kind of life you would like to have, if you could have every life that could be yours in a way. So those are my messy amounts of questions. I hope that will be useful. Like, differentiate between depression and having a bad life. Okay, question number 3. I've been feeling disconnected from my family and friends and struggle with feelings of loneliness. How can I improve my relationships and find fulfillment in my personal life? That's a great question. I think there are hardly any dimensions of your life that affect your psychological well-being as your tribe. I think rather than trying to improve the relationships and find fulfillment for yourself, I think a better question you can ask yourself is, how can you be a better friend for that particular individual that you want to improve your relationship with? How can you be a better son, a better daughter, a better boyfriend, a better partner? How can you be a more valuable member of a community, rather than trying to see your tribe as something that it exists to serve you? Like, think from a different angle. Like, how can you add more value to your tribe, more kindness, more love? Like, it's how often are you checking in with the people you're connected by? Are you, when somebody has a birthday, or do you congratulate them and do you give them a unique gift? When somebody is moving, are you the first person who's offering their help? When somebody has a bad time, do you go to their house and bring them noodles and say that you can count on them? And I think that's like something that will serve you well for life, is the idea that if you focus on giving rather than getting, it's a sure pathway to getting more from the people around you, because they will be incentivized to return the favor, I would say. So when you're lonely and you struggle with a sense of isolation, is try to be more useful. Try to be the kind of person that you hope to attract into your tribe. Maybe that's a good advice for this one. Okay, got it. Let's go to the fourth question. Hey, I've heard mixed things about medication for mental health. Can you speak to its role in finding the right balance? I have mixed feelings about this topic as well. There are some great psychological medications out there that work. However, I feel that you should always be careful in regards to the narratives that are attached to them, in a way where if somebody, for example, if you're depressed and somebody gives you antidepressants and they tell you you're sick, rather than telling you that you have psychological symptoms that you're trying to treat, it's not just that you're taking antidepressants, you're also imposing an identity around yourself, like I am sick, or I'm a victim, or my brain is broken, it can't do these things by itself. And I think that is disempowering in its nature. So the thing that I would say about this is there are great tools out there in psychopharmacology, but be careful in regards to how you use them, and know that there is always not just one solution to finding a problem, and that maybe that's an important point as well. Like doctors often get money for describing them to you, so do not only base your sense of who you are and what you're capable of on the people who are trained to see you as commodities who are broken, in a way, because you're not just a machine that needs fixing. You are a human being who is the most complex creature ever assembled. And so be careful of physical engineers telling you that is how you are currently is not correctly constructed. I would leave it at that. Okay, the fifth question. I have a history of unhealthy coping mechanisms and struggle to manage my emotions effectively. How can I find healthier ways to cope with stress and challenges? The quality of your coping habits determines the quality of your life. And I was always fascinated by it in regards to how far people go and how much success differs from person to person. And you notice from your own story where there have been episodes in your past where you have been coping with the suffering and the stress and the malevolence within your life in a healthy way, and episodes maybe where instead of going to the gym when you feel overwhelmed or meditating, where you picked up food and numbed yourself with it, or you use drugs or maybe other people in order to escape the discomfort that your life brought with it in a way. So how can I find healthier ways to cope with stress and challenges? Write down everything, every bad habits you have, and try to see if you find more healthier alternatives for them. And when you're in that particular moment where you feel obliged to follow the compulsions, the commands of your vices, choose virtues instead, and make a little plan where you have implementation intentions to them, where it's like, okay, if I feel the urge to eat a cookie, instead I will eat an apple. Or if I feel, if I notice that I'm about to go to the supermarket and to buy cigarettes, I will call my friend instead and have him talk out of me in a way. So be more mindful of the decisions you have in your life and choose more nobly and choose more wisely. Okay, next question. Hi, I have a friend who's struggling with mental health issues and I want to be supportive. Can you offer some advice for friends and family members? This is a very difficult topic, and I've a personal story here. I've had some members in my family who were on a downward trajectory, who I always wanted to help, but they never wanted it from me, and I was looking for many ways in which I could be supportive to them, but I actually made it worse and lost the connection with those persons totally. And even after we went separate ways, I always try to fix them from afar, or rather like provide them with tools that could do so. And I think that was one of the motivations why I created a lot of tools online, because I was hoping that they would check out my channels and use them for themselves. But I won't go into those personal details of those matters because they are like close family matters to me. I once asked Professor Fark from Stanford University the same question, and how can I help people who don't want my help? And he said something very briefly that made a lot of sense to me. He said to me, you don't focus on the ones who want your help. You will have your hands full with them already, and there will be a time in your life where you can't even help the people who ask you for it because there will be so many of it. And that's also something I feel that is very true, where it's like focus your attention in regards to you helping, and remind yourself that one of the preconditions of creating a therapeutic alliance in your personal and professional life with somebody is that both people want for things to be better. If you're just standing on the side trying to change them, there's a chance that you're actually making it worse. So be careful of that. Okay, next question. Okay, the seventh question is this. I can't seem to shake off this feeling of sadness, no matter what I do. I'm worried when it's something more than just the blues. How can I find out if I'm depressed, and what can I do to feel better? That's actually a really good question. At what point do you know you are no longer sad, but you're actually depressed? Of course, there's some criteria out there, but one of the exercises that I've created for this particular purpose, when I was asking myself this question, is on the Behavior University, and it's called Be Your Own Therapist. And this question, you pretty much write a case study about yourself, a report of how you observe yourself, and where you write down what's wrong with your life, with your person, with your relationships, and your bad habits and everything. And by the end of it, you basically also create an intervention for yourself in order to figure out precisely what's your best course of action in a way. I think like if you're asking this question, there might be enough reason for you to investigate this a little bit more. Okay. I will put this exercise, of course, in the show notes like the other ones. Next one. Hey, I recently went through a traumatic event and I'm not sure how to cope. Can you talk about the impact of trauma on mental health and offer some healing strategies? That is a very deep question. I'm not sure I'm perfectly in the right mind space to answer it in a sophisticated way, but it's one great way to think about traumas is to think about them as an alarm system where in the past you have encountered something dangerous and haven't really figured out how to protect your future self from it in a way. Imagine like you're standing in a forest and you fall into a hole, and after you fell into the hole you climb yourself out, you maybe broke something in a way. Like before you figured out how to discover future holes in this kind of, or future traps in that kind of forest, it will be very uncomfortable for you to continue your path through that forest, if that makes sense. So what I would suggest is a technique that it's also in the Behavior University, which is called the Ghostbuster, where you deconstruct the particular traumatic event that you have. You write down what happened, you write down what consequences ensued for you, what role other people played within it, and you also discover how this particular event is haunting you, why it is haunting you, and what you could learn to turn that wound of yours into wisdom. And that exercise, again, it's called the Ghostbuster. I like the name, by the way. Is inspired by Sigmund Freud. Like he discovered more than 100 years ago that when he let his students write about traumatic events, that their emotional symptoms became less, so to say, because they understood more what happened to them, and they could be more prepared in regards to moving forward with their life. So that is something that I can really recommend here, is like think on paper again, write down what happened, write down why is it hard for you to endure it, and then put some time aside in order to allow your psyche to do the necessary updates, because a trauma in its essence is usually a collapsed belief system. It's, for example, if imagine like your partner cheated on you, it's what this is telling you basically is that your idea of who your partner wasn't correct. Your idea of who you as a person were is in need of an upgrade. Your idea of what love is, and maybe the idea that you can do everything right and still all went to shit, are all lessons you need to make. So this takes some time, but it gets lesser once you understood what happened there, and once you extracted the maturity of the brutal lessons that these kinds of things have to offer in a way. So I hope that made sense for you. So it's also writing about these things down will help you to make the necessary updates for your life that are important to do this. Okay, question number 9. I always had trouble making and keeping a friend. It feels like no one really gets me and I'm tired of being alone. Can you help me figure out how to make and keep lasting relationships? Well, a good question would be, why does no one get you? And why are you alone in a way? Is it because you don't have enough interactions with other people? Do you live in a place that just doesn't have a lot of people around you who are like you? Or maybe could it be that there's something wrong with you that needs fixing in a way? I actually saw a funny clip today from an influencer. His name is Alex Hamosi or something like this. You know who I mean? He's like a sales muscle guy who does actually cool short videos. And he has a video in which he shares that he struggled from a bad reputation for quite some time, and that he suffered from temporary isolations in regards to him being a party animal and being a really like egoistic in his younger years, and he asked his father once on what he could do to improve his reputation and attract the kind of people that he needs in order to grow. And I found that very fun. His father basically told him, have you tried being a little bit less of a piece of shit than you are right now? And I like so most in that video disregarded that piece of advice, but I thought it was really profound. Like the idea of, if your world is not manifesting itself like in your desired manner, there's something probably wrong with you. And a great question you can ask yourself is, what kind of person would be compatible with the kind of persons you want to attract? So there's also, again here, a tool that I wrote for this. It's called the role model detective, in which you think on paper about the people you admire and get clear on why you admire them, so that you can make a strategy afterwards in order to make yourself, in your habits, in your belief systems, in the way what you give to the world and how you treat other people and how your character is architected, a little bit less like what you are today and a little bit more like the persons you look up to. So there's my advice there. Okay, 10th question. I lost a loved one recently and I'm struggling with grief. Can you share how you've dealt with it in the past and offer some advice? First of all, I'm sorry, like losing people you love to death, disease, suffering, or it's one of the hardest things that the human condition brings with it. One of the things that I can recommend here is I've interviewed the world leading grief expert, Dr. Dorothy Hollinger, some years ago. She's the author of the book The Anatomy of Grief, and I've learned a lot in that conversation, and one sentence kind of stood out for me. I'm not even sure she remembered saying it, but she said grief is the price we pay for love. And I thought that was beautiful in a way, because in essence, one of the things that make human connections so valuable and so precious and magical and is that we all know how it feels if we don't have them anymore. So when you currently struggle with the feeling of abandonment or losing something, you can also ask yourself, what did you not lose? Are you being appreciative to the fullest of your capacity for the people you still have in your life? And is there maybe something you can do tomorrow to improve these bonds and be grateful for the kind of people you still have in your life? That might be something that be helpful for you, is to use the time more wisely with the ones where you still have time with them, and keep this as a reminder to not waste time, to do what you are here to do on this world, and also to cherish every single moment you have with your loved ones, because you don't know how many more of these you have with them, and they should treat you the same way, because your time is also clicking. So maybe you transform this traumatic event into a blessing by making death your ally and reminding you constantly that we have a very finite time on this world, and that it makes sense to say what we have to say while we have the chance to do it. So hope this was useful. Question 11. I've been feeling stressed out and overwhelmed lately. My job, my family, and my personal life all seem to be demanding too much of me. How can I manage my stress and find balance in my life? There are two ways in which you can see this. There's a great exercise, being repetitive here. It's called the stress the stress, what is it again? Stress. Fast? Okay, I'm gonna try this. Cut it out. Next question. I've been feeling stressed out and overwhelmed lately. My job, my family, and my personal life all seem to be demanding too much of me. How can I manage my stress and find balance in my life? One of the things is okay. Alright, question number 11. I've been feeling stressed out and overwhelmed lately. My job, my family, and my personal life all seem to be demanding too much of me. How can I manage my stress and find balance in my life? There are two ways in which you can handle this. Basically, you can either limit the amount of stress that you currently have, like put it better, or increase the amount of capacity you have for how much stress you can tolerate, so to say. Like the first thing that I would look at if I would be working with you would be what's the nature of the stressful situations that you have in your life. Is it really that you don't have enough time, or could it maybe be that you are committed to many projects? Like what are some things you can let go of maybe? And are you involved in too many, are you chasing too many goals at once? Like one of the things that I've often found with people who are overwhelmed is that they're like captains of a ship where they try to reach multiple ports at once. And I think if you think about that scenario, it's quite natural to feel stressed, because there's something within them that knows that they won't hit either of those. And so one of the things that would maybe look together with you would be like, how clear are the next moves that you're currently pursuing in regards to your projects? Do you have a clear roadmap, and are you there like on track with something? Do you have does your plan involve recovery breaks? Are you using your energy excessively at the moment because you're impatient? And so maybe it might make sense to go back to the drawing book there a little bit and investigate the overall quality of how you go through life. I feel that when you have a clear plan of where you want to go, it also actually helps you to say no to a lot of things, because you know that it would sabotage your mission in regards to this. Like, I'm a very creative person, for example, and because I'm like now I have a lot of people who rely on me with jobs and stuff, where I am almost forced to say no to 99% of my creative ideas, because that would mean that I would either burn out or sabotage the duties that I've already adopted. So maybe something you can also look at is, what are some things you said yes to that you should have said no to in your life, and can you reverse engineer those situations and reconquer your schedule? Okay. Question number 12. I'm looking for a support system for my mental health. Can you talk about how you've created one for yourself and recommend any resources? Well, there's the number one resources I use that I created myself is the Behavior University. And what it basically is and how I use it for myself and for my clients is you use technology in order to log in every day, like where you are going, and measure the kind of progress that you are making towards this kind of destination, and keep your goals in check, your habits and your belief systems. I'm a big fan of alignment, where I don't really like the word mental health system. I rather think about as creating a support system for you to stay on track towards your personal path or purpose, where my habits, my thoughts, my goals, my systems are all building blocks of where I use them in order to build the kind of person I want to become, and build the kind of life I want to live, and build the kind of legacy that I want to leave behind, and build the kind of contributions that I want to leave behind. So for me, the Behavior University is that particular system that helps me to keep myself in check, whether or not I'm currently staying on path or not. So maybe that's something you want to check out. Okay, question number 13. I'm in my 40s and I've been stuck in the same job for the past 20 years. I feel like I've hit the dead end and I don't know what to do next. Can you help me figure out how to find a new career that I'm passionate about? Yeah, like one of the things I would do with you is to look in the past of your journey and look out for moments in which work did not feel like work. Moments where you lost track of time in regards to particular tasks that you were engaged in, and I kind of would look like for putting you in a kind of situations where the kind of work you do is just who you are in a way. Like when I write books, for example, it doesn't feel like I'm writing. I'm just being me. I'm just telling stories or trying to create tools that help me to improve my own life and the life of the people who will use these kind of tools. So it might be useful to discover who you are and see like what's the gift you have to offer to this world. And also maybe remind yourself that many successful entrepreneurs or successful people in general started very late. I think a great example is like Colonel Sanders, the dude from Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think before he got successful, he was in his 70s or something. Well, maybe in his 60s, something around that age. So remind yourself that it's not too late and that it actually doesn't take that much time to discover your calling in life, in a way. And useful thing for you is like consult your creativity, your conscience. Like it's like write some questions down. Like, okay, what would be a career that would excite me? Like if you could have it your way. And that's maybe a good tool that you can use. I wrote a book called The Career Therapist, and in this exercise, which is like I think takes a month or something. It's quite the long workbook. You figure out like what your career would look like if you could have it your way, and there are things in there that help you to figure out like when you feel flow and how you can make more money and how you can solve more problems and what kind of problems you would solve if you could solve any problems in the world, and how you can increase the number of problems you solve for other people, and what kind of creative pursuits and other careers you find attractive, so you can kind of like bake your own cake, so to say. So maybe you want to check out the Career Therapist on the Behavior University. Oh no, I think it's called Tailor-Made Career. Yeah, I forgot that. Been a while since I've been digging into that, but I can really recommend it. Okay, question number 14. Let me have a piece of coffee. I've been feeling lost and disconnected from my own life. I'm not sure what my purpose is or what I want from my future. Can you help me find my direction and figure out what I want? One of the things that really made a profound impact on the people I work with and also on my own life is to start thinking with the end in mind, and think on paper about where you want to be by the end of the life. Like a great question you can ask yourself is what kind of person would you like to be in the final analysis of your life? Like what are the creative accomplishments you want to contribute to mankind? How do you want to be remembered? Like if you would imagine that, there's actually a good exercise you can do. There's an exercise called corpse conversing on the Behavior University, in which you pretty much imagine yourself as dead, and you view all your loved ones speak an eulogy around you, like what it was about you that was great, what it was about you that meant a lot to them. And in that exercise you figure out from the largest resolution possible, like who you want to be over the totality of your life course. And once you've done that, like made a first blueprint of like who you want to be over the course of your life and what kind of legacy you want to leave, you shrink down the resolutions more and more, because it's very hard to make a plan for where you want to be in 9 years, but it's good to have a vision of becoming a good person under your own kind of set of criteria for that. And after that, I would really recommend that you do something called the Future Blueprinting Program, which I mentioned today as well. It's where you investigate those questions, like, okay, like you said, you want direction and figure out what I want. Well, if you would figure out what you want and write about it, then you can do this particular program and define for each part of your life, well, each dimension, but also part of the day, like what kind of days do you want to have? Like who do you want to work with? What kind of habits you want to have? Like what do you want to dress? Like is your life architected? Like if you feel that these kind of things would just come naturally to you, that's not the case. I feel that like a future blueprint is something you have to earn, it's something you have to work on, it's something where you have to put aside a month or so and create the first draft of what a successful future that would excite you would look like, and then direction comes afterwards. Like how can you, like direction to where? Like when you ask somebody for directions on the streets, like try doing that without knowing where you want to go. It's like, are you that person at the moment who's walking around asking people, where do I want to, like that's a nice scene in Alice in Wonderland that I like. I guess this cat on a tree, and Alice asks her, where do I have to go? And the cat asks her, where do you want to go? And do you know where you're going? And Alice says no, and then says like, it doesn't matter where you want to go, then just go left. And I think that was kind of like a funny scene in the movie, because it's so reflective of the saying, so to say, that no wind will be favorable to you if you don't know what kind of port you are currently aiming at. So that might be something you want to really think on paper about for a long time, until you have your first vague idea of the star that you are chasing in this regard. So that might be helpful for you. Okay, next question, number 15. I've been struggling with anxiety for as long as I can remember. It's starting to interfere with my daily life, and I'm afraid it's only going to get worse. How can I manage my anxiety and live a fulfilling life? Well, to be honest, like anxiety gets kind of worse over time. Like it's what you can get better at it, however, is managing your emotional states. And what really can be helpful for this is I've wrote like 80 tools on the Behavior University just about anxiety. One of them is called the Anxiety Suit, where you basically surround yourself with the kind of habits that will help you to keep those inner voices in check. And a lot of what anxiety control really is when you have these discomfortable kinds of inner voices speaking up to you, it's that you proactively have a script of questions in mind that you can ask yourself when that happens. Like if your anxiety tells you, for example, you're good for nothing and you should just shut your business down and never try anything great again, and that nobody likes you or whatever, is you can actually use questions in order to identify the validity behind those inner voices. Like I said, really true. It's like, is there another way to see this? Is this inner dialogue at this moment necessary? And through these kinds of Socratic questions that you can ask yourself, you can figure out what anxious voices are helpful and which ones are actually not in your interest, if that makes sense. Because, for example, if you don't know where to sleep tomorrow, it might make sense to be a bit anxious to get your ass going and make some money. But if you are perfectly fine situations with your relationship and you feel that your partner is cheating, is going to break up with you any second, that might be irrational, and you need to have a set of questions that you can ask yourself in order to diffuse those disempowering thoughts that pop up. If you go to the Behavior University, there's actually a whole criteria of anti-anxiety tools that when you click on them, you can find lots of tools for social anxiety, for all sorts of different problems that are revolving around cognitive control in a way. So you might check that out as well. Becoming a better writer definitely helps you to become a better thinker, and the better you are at thinking, the better you are at not making cognitive errors that cause you to have emotional storms within yourself. So you might want to check that out. Okay. Question number 16. I'm constantly worried about everything, from my health to my finances to my relationship. I can't seem to stop worrying, no matter how hard I try. Can you teach me some techniques to help me manage my worry and live in the present moment? I think one simple technique you can use here is cognitive procrastination, which is asking yourself when the worry chart attacks you is, do I have to think this through right now? Or can this wait? Sometimes when these emotional compulsions pop up, we feel like we have to go through these thoughts right now and solve them. But it's actually rarely effective, and what sometimes helps me if I'm particularly anxious before a business meeting or something is to, for example, schedule 5 minutes for worrying later that day, which I'm going to take a pen and paper and really going to think through these things in order to discover how I'm fixing it in a way. So having some worry blocks in your day where you think about these things strategically rather than thinking about them all day might be something that is useful to you. Okay. Question number 17. I've always struggled with low self-esteem and I've never felt good enough. It's affecting... Let me read that again. I've always struggled with low self-esteem and I've never felt good enough. It's affecting my relationships and my confidence, and I don't know how to change it. Can you help me build my self-esteem and believe in myself? A great exercise that I create for this is setting the bar. It's one that I do with my clients quite often. It's only 4 questions in which you write down what your personal success parameters are. It's like, I think I learned it from an author who was one of my earliest podcast guests. His name is James Clear. He wrote a book called Get Rich. What's the book from Napoleon Hill? He wrote the legacy to that. Get Rich and Make Friends or something. Anyway, I'm butchering them. Sorry, James. Cut that out. I've always struggled with low self-esteem and I've never felt good enough. It's affecting my relationships and my confidence, and I don't know how to change it. Can you help me build my self-esteem and believe in myself? I think so. One of the questions that I would ask you right away, and I would give you some homework assignment with it, is what are your current success parameters? Like you said, you're struggling with your self-worth. Do you know under what kind of conditions you feel worthy about yourself? And most people that I've met who are not confident actually don't have these criteria. So even if they would be doing everything right, they would know that they have the right now to feel confident because they haven't defined who they want to be as a person, like how productive they want to be. And that's something that I would really recommend. There's an exercise called Setting the Bar, in which you write on the Behavior University about who you have to be in order to feel good about yourself. And in that exercise, you investigate the quality of those standards you've imposed on yourself. It's one of the things that I've noticed. I've met spectacular people who are all award achievers who don't have confidence because their ideas of who they have to be in order to feel confident is ridiculously tyrannical and unrealistic, and it's not serving them. Where ideally you want to feel good about yourself, but you also want to be reasonable in regards to defining yourself not on a daily basis, where like you decide that you have an inherent self-worth, and where even if you mess up, like you're still gonna walk around with a bright chest and gonna correct the errors that you have done, if that makes any sense. So I think that's the second advice. Don't measure that every day. You know, it's like pick a time frame. Like if you are, don't decide from a moment to moment whether or not like you deserve to feel confident. Like even though it's okay to feel shitty after you have a like a hangover, for example, and you messed up on your sobriety regimens, but it's like scale your shame, your punishment for yourself to the degree where it is helpful. Otherwise, you're making yourself not a better person, but a worse person actually. Okay. Can you speak to your early influences and what led you to become a thought leader in the mental health world? I don't think I'm a thought leader in the mental health world. I think I'm passionate about psychology and learning and stories, and I pretty much want to figure out like how to create cool things, but I don't think of myself as a thought. Okay, can you speak to your early influences and what led you to become a thought leader in the mental health world? I don't think that I'm a thought leader in the mental health world by any sense. Whatever, I've met world leaders on my podcast, and I can only aspire to be one day, even though I'm not sure this is my path. I think my path is more like supporting the thought leaders that are already in existence. But early influences who helped me to put me in the position that I am right now, where my parents, like I think I have the best parents in the world. It's my mother is a great, one of the best people I ever met in my life. Like I pretty much grew up in a library, because even though we were not having always a lot of money, I still remember that even on the toilets there were like hundreds of books, and it was just something that was so natural in our home that rather than getting the new PlayStation, I don't even know if you guys still know what this is, but I was always being given stories and the opportunity to converse with great thinkers of the past through book. Like when other people received, I don't know, video games, my mom bought me the collective works of William Shakespeare or Nietzsche or Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Goethe, and all these kind of great thinkers. And I think they really like just made it natural for me to think, because I was being given like all these books of the other great thinkers that these unbelievable people. And so my mom was definitely like one of the superheroes who installed a passion for learning in me. And the other influence that I had for sure was my father, who above else was one of the craziest persons I ever met in this world, but my personal hero. And he always had a sense of high expectations for me in regards that he really believed that I would, and he treated me that I would one day accomplish something magnificent for the world. And he always expected this from me, but at the same time he was very patient with me when I failed. So it was always like an encouraging disciplinarian who from afar motivated me to chase after big things and didn't punish me when I failed for them. And he's up to this day the hardest worker I ever met in my life. Like like he had many heart surgeries, and I lost track of how many times I had to get my father out of the emergency room and sign some contracts so that he can continue to go back to work. And one of the things that he said that always makes me smile is, I remember one time when I got him out of the clinic so that he can go back to work again, even though like he had a heart attack on like, the same day, was I can't afford to die. I need to look after my family. And he meant that. Like he really, in the earlier years before I could contribute to the finances of my family, I really think like he chased off death a couple of times because he was so focused on making sure that the rest of our family is alright. So I think like, I had a lot of love for my mother, and passion for learning, and from my father, I had like this extremely diligent, encouraging man who believed in me from afar. And like when you have people who believe in you, you attempt big things. And I've met from my clients that it's really hard to have to go after things that are difficult if the people who you grew up with treated you as if they would never, if you would never amount to anything significant in a way. So hats off to my parents. Like if you're watching this, I love you, and I am continuing to put myself out there in these comfortable positions, hope to contribute something of worth to this world. Okay, next question. I have trouble expressing my feelings and needs in my relationships. I'm afraid of being rejected or hurt, and it's causing problems in them. Can you help me learn how to communicate effectively and build strong relationships? That was a topic that affected me for a long time. I never quite felt, I didn't never feel comfortable like telling people when I was hurt, because I had a father who basically told me like you gotta be Batman at all times. So for me, even acknowledging that something hurt me, something is very, very difficult. And as a consequence, I had also some problems in my relationships in a way where I adopted too much responsibility and kind of was blind to other people taking advantage of me. And in regard to the communication of this, I wrote 100 books, 100 workbooks and techniques to particular relationship challenges that are also on the Behavior University, and a lot of them are about communication. So what I would advise you is that there's an exercise, now that I think about it, it's called the expectation manager, I think. And in it, you write down what you expect from yourself in your relationship, what you expect from your partner, and your partner does the same thing. And the both of you investigate the quality of those expectations in order to discover if you have reason to be hurt because the other person violated your intelligent and wise boundaries that you set for yourself, or if the other person disappointed you and is actually their fault and they need to make an adjustment. Like those things are not really clear. So my advice for you is do this exercise and figure out if you are actually being rejected and someone is hurting you and you need to step in, or if you need to grow the hell up and adjust your expectations. So that's something that I can't tell you right now from this. But doing the relationship expectation manager is the name of the technique. Doing that will definitely help you to think more clearly about this topic. Okay. Can you talk about your experience with the journaling programs for the Behavior University and how they've influenced your ideas about personal growth? I think I'm in a particularly strange position because I have created them. So rather than using all of these programs, which had a transformative effect on who I am as a person beyond comprehension, the creation of them also really shaped me, because I've learned to ask the right questions and use questions as a way to discover my own truth forwards and regards to making the best decisions possible. So I think when you learn to write and you write daily, you see your thoughts and you can change them, and you can write, or rather rewrite, your character based on what you see. Can you talk about your experience with the journaling programs from the Behavior University and how they've influenced your ideas about personal growth? Writing in general has been one of these superpowers that I have acquired over the last years, in a way where, as a person who not only used all the self-journaling programs there, but also created them, they have equipped me with what feels no less than the ability to write my character into existence, so to say. Like, one of the strange things that I really can't explain is that it seems to me that change often starts from within, in a way. If you think on paper about who you are, about who you want to be, and you make strategies and how to get there, and you're making a decision also to, like a sacrifice, like a cognitive sacrifice on getting there. And these kind of things change you, and they equip you in the real world when you're done with writing with an awareness for your thoughts. And if you are aware of what you're thinking, you are more equipped to do the right actions. And when you behave better, it's only a matter of time until your life gets better. So I would really recommend that you write as much as you possibly can, because it's a superpower, and it's nowhere clear to human beings what words are, but I certainly believe that they have like a reality shaping element. And I'm not talking blah blah about this is the secret or whatever, but it feels like you're coding your character when you're writing about yourself. And I think that it's, if you want to change who you are, if you want to change what your life is like, writing about what these changes would look like is a great place to start, that I can recommend to you wholeheartedly. Even about your vision, it's like if you write down what you want and where you want to go, strange things happen, because your experience in the world around you in a whole different manner. Suddenly you are able to see the kind of tools that were hidden before you, that can help you to build a bridge from where you are towards the land that you hope to reach one day, if that makes sense. And rather, on the other side, if you don't write about your vision on paper, for example, a lot of these things remain invisible to you. So you get the gift of perception, and that's the most powerful gift I think a human being can have. It's like knowing how to get from A to B. I think that's it's a life hack beyond comparison in a way. Okay. I've been feeling stuck in my life, and I don't know how to move forward. I feel like I've lost my motivation and my spark, and I don't know how to get it back. Can you help me find my motivation and live my best life? This reminds me of a great joke. And all great psychological jokes are really not that good. But it's about, why does the chicken want to cross the road? And the answer is because the other side is better. And the moral of this this very unfunny joke is, have you defined what better is? Like what would motivate you? Like what is something you want out of life in regards to this? Have you really thought on paper about the kind of life that would make you jump out of the bed in the morning and make you feel alive about who you are and what the kind of projects you're working on? Because if you haven't, it might be premature to question your motivation. It might be that you didn't put in the coordinates into your GPS system for where you want to arrive. Another thing that really will motivate the shit out of you is defining precisely where you don't want to end up. That's the second part of the future blueprinting program, is where you create, pretty much inspired by some of the work Peterson did in the past, is as where you don't want to end up, and knowing what will happen if you remain unmotivated, if you remain like the slave of your vices, and it's something that will motivate you for sure, because the acquisition of pleasure is incredibly powerful in regards to moving forward and convincing yourself that particular sacrifice is worth it. But the avoidance of a great punishment is even more motivating, I feel. So maybe you also do this part of the quest that I talked about you, and figure out precisely where you will end up in 5 years if you continue to walk around without a name. Okay. Hi, I'm searching for a therapist and I'm not sure what to look for. Can you offer some advice on finding the right one? I did a podcast once with Dr. Jeffrey Kotler, author of 107 books about psychotherapy, and he is, from what I consider, the best therapist who ever lived. And when I had him on my podcast, one of the reasons why I reached out to them was, by that time I interviewed him, I had my own therapist and was very unhappy with my therapist, and I wanted to figure out, like, if I'm a cocky son of a bitch who is not maximizing the opportunity that was in front of me, or if the therapist was not good at his job, basically, because there was a craft that I wanted to pursue a career in myself. So I felt it it might be worth to nail down the criteria for what a good one is and what a bad one is. And in this regard, I would recommend to you 2 books that will maybe help you to figure this out. They are both by Jeffrey Kotler. The first one is called Bad Therapy, where the greatest therapists in the world share their worst failures in order to give their approach of what bad therapy is. And the other one is Their Finest Hour, which is a collection of the greatest therapists in the world where they share their most proudest case studies. And I think the combination of those 2 books will help you to figure out what a good therapist is, what a bad one is. And there's also a chapter, I think, in Their Finest Hour about how to be a good patient. So in this regard, I would like to recommend you forward to another expert who knows much more about this topic than I will be accumulate over the course of my lifetime, for sure. So, Dr. Jeffrey Kotler, check them out. Okay, I've been feeling overwhelmed and overworked lately. I have trouble saying no, and I'm afraid I'm going to burn out. Can you help me find better work-life balance and take care of myself? I think a great piece of advice is when you fail to say no, think about what it is that you're going to say yes to. In regards to if you're not being a good bouncer of your own schedule, a doorman, so to say, what kind of ills are you inviting into your life over the long run? Like, one of the things that I learned recently, for example, was that I have a lot of creative ideas, and it's saying no to the no longer being the puppet of my creativity was something that took me a long time to learn. And I had a lot of bad experience where I had to learn, for example, that if I say yes to creative projects that are not aligned with my number one priority, that I, for example, wouldn't come up with the money that it would be necessary to pay my employees, and that I would let them down, and the conversations with them hurt me to the degree where I became much more conservative as a consequence in regards to not being a blind visionary who just does whatever he feels like, but actually is a little bit mature in regards to his own limits and his own responsibilities that he adopted. So maybe it might be good to think on paper about what happens if you continue to be a shitty CEO of your own life, and what kind of person you will be if you fail to take care of the kind of habits that are necessary in order to sustain you. Like, a good story that comes to mind here is, like, before I fell in love with psychology, I was in love with psychology back then, but when my main focus was on playing basketball, I often would say yes to playing more minutes that were good for me and training more than was wise. And as a consequence, I became less successful as a basketball player because I had one stress injury after another. And up to this day, my knees hurt when I am on the airplane because I did some real damage in this regard. So maybe think about this as an athlete as well, and ask yourself, what kind of ills am I inviting into my life if I fail to have the necessary rest in order to function as a sustaining human being? Okay, I have social anxiety and it's holding me back. Can you share a story about someone who overcame it and offer some advice? Well, why not a story of myself, in a way? A special form of social anxiety that I had was in a time where I quit alcohol, and where I still wanted to go to parties. I quit drinking alcohol because it was ruining my life, and those kind of settings up to this day caused me to feel really uncomfortable because I still associate a lot of pain that ensued as a consequence of me living a hedonistic lifestyle. So when I was invited to parties and there were friends of mine, and everyone was having a good time and I couldn't drink, and I was battling internally with me to preserve my sobriety, I was getting somewhat anxious because I was at unease, and I was even more tempted to drink than I would be originally, because it was like a crazy vicious cycle. And I had to figure out some strategies that would help me to not miss out on that part of life entirely without with that entirely in a way. So what really helped me in those kinds of situations was when I was noticing that I was getting anxious, when I felt like, oh my god, the other person thinks they know that I'm not happy here, they know that I would rather drink, they know that I'm uncomfortable, I'm radiating this sense of unease. One thing that really helped me was to start engaging in conversations that were particularly interesting to me. So when I was in front of the people, I noticed that everybody who's drunk likes talking, and everybody who's at a party is they want to show who they are, and they want to show it's their time to shine. They are working on a hard things most of the time, but they don't have usually that much time to get recognition for it. So when I used this kind of setting as an opportunity to ask them about what projects they were working on, what was going great in their life, but also about like deep questions in which they could take care of speaking, and rather than me listening to my social anxiety, where I had a fucking megaphone and screaming into my ear, I would listen to the other person that was in front of me. And that was really something that was helpful for me, because that way, like, instead of listening to my internal dialogue, who would tell me like I'm a loser who can't even maintain like his drinking habits and is uncool or whatever, I could listen to these interesting stories that would teach me something and make me a better person, and maybe even like increase my friendship with these persons. So like my advice for you is listen not to yourself, but listen to the people at the parties, and notice that they are there to talk about themselves, not to listen, because that's what alcohol usually does. It makes you a great talker, but you really don't want to listen. So if you are in those kind of situations, you are anxious, it's allow the other persons to entertain you and focus on how they tell the story, and really be with them and ask curious follow-up questions. And when they finish telling your story, summarize it to the best of your ability and ask them why this is important to you and what is, and then you will have an incredibly exciting adventure rather than a horrible time. So don't focus on yourself, focus on the persons that are in front of you for social anxiety. Okay, next question. I'm afraid of failure. I'm always too scared to take the risk. I feel like I'm holding myself back and I'm not living up to my full potential. Can you help me overcome my fear of failure and take risks to reach my goals? Taking risks is something that I'm not a big fan of. I love protecting the downside in regards to the things that I do. I think that's very important in life. But I feel that what I do often is when I have people from my sales coaching program and they worry whether or not they should make a big investment into their business, is helping them calculate precisely what it will cost them to not go out of their comfort zone and make a risky investment, because oftentimes it is more risky over the long run to avoid failure rather than just doing it in a way. So avoiding failure is not a good recipe to avoiding it, failure in general, but playing it safe is actually more risky, if that makes sense. So that is the thing that I can tell you for this is be afraid of the right things. Have the wisdom to be afraid of failure, but be more afraid of what happens when you don't attempt to do the things that feel meaningful to you, and then pretty much move forward anxiously, but be more anxious to inactivity, if that makes sense. Okay. I have a hard time managing stress. Can you share some techniques that have worked for you? This may sound very strange, but the best advice that I have for managing stress is to solve the challenge that caused it, in a way. Like I'm a big fan of my anxious or haunting emotions in regards to are usually signs that I've neglected some responsibilities. And these kinds of, like, I can use all the techniques in the world to ask myself the right questions, to diffuse these thoughts, but they will never go away, and they should not go away, because anxiety is a very useful emotion that informs you often about a need for correction or duty. So what I would tell you is consult your anxiety as if it was a positive advisor who came to make your life better. And then if they have a valid point, make a strategy in order to solve the things that cause you stress in the first place. And if you have a real strategy in place, that strategy is not how to fix things right now, but maybe, for example, your financial situation isn't what it is. And if you show your anxiety, this is gonna take me 6 months to get a pay raise, but this is what I'm doing, this is my plan, this is the best that I can come up with in a way. Like it's not helpful that you're fucking fire alarm who makes me numb and makes me not engage in life anymore. Actually, the thing that you're trying to warn me about is getting worse. So can you be a team with me and walk with me towards the same directions? And I feel like those kinds of personalizations of our emotions is really what helps us to become a leader of an internal house that collectively works towards the betterment of all emotional entities that reside within you. Okay, I hope that made sense. Next question. I'm in my 50s and I'm starting to feel like I've missed out on life. No, I had the question before. Okay. As a working mom, I struggle with finding time for myself and my family. What are some effective ways to manage my time and balance responsibilities? Managing expectations can be really something that is helpful. I think, when my mother raised me, I saw that taking care of the family took 110% of her time. And one of the things that helped her to remain happy was that she knew that it was a full sacrifice. And that for the time while we were there was not so much time for her in a way. So I think a lot of disappointment ensues is if you have an incongruence in regards to how things are, in regards to how things are going, how things should be in a way. So my advice for you here would be to create realistic expectations in regards to what these challenges requiring from you, because I feel it becomes easier to bear if you know I'm not going to sleep as much for the next year as I was in the last one, or this is going to be a rough episode of my life. I'm going to do my best to carry it as nobly as possible without being burdened by not giving yourself permissions to be exhausted or unhappy or not being the happiest person over that part of your life as you could be. I hope you hear to the intention and not felt that I was telling you that it's okay to be miserable, but what you're doing is hard, and hard things are painful, and give yourself permission to endure that pain is something that will make it less painful, I feel. Okay, 2 more questions, then we have to wrap up. I've been feeling stuck in my career for years and unsure about my purpose. How can I find it again? A different kind of advice that I didn't give before in regards to finding your purpose, finding a sense of meaning in your life is looking at the kind of things that bother you in the world. Like, what kind of problems do you feel passionate about? And see if you can use your anger in regards to how certain problems are in the world in order to use these negative emotions as directive agents that move you towards the things that you were supposed to do. For instance, I was very unhappy with the education system of my country and the psychiatric system of my country, because I felt that they were both not upholding the promises that they were trying to convey to the rest of the population. I feel that they were in some cases doing more harm than good. And at one point, particularly after I tried to go to the psychiatric system of my country, I was so unhappy with it and that I became really, really mad. And at some point, I kind of realized that this was a real gift, because it was an opportunity for me to fix something and to go on a journey in order to create maybe a better system, or create something that could be added to this system that was in need of repair rather than just bitching about it in a way. So maybe you think about what are some problems in the world that bother you more than others, and maybe contemplate that this might be a problem that you would feel a great sense of meaning for if you would devote years of your life to helping to eradicate or at least ease the suffering that ensues from that kind of challenge that exists in this world. Last question, then the memory card is full. I have a history of toxic relationships and struggle to let go of unhealthy patterns. How can I find healthy love and build positive relationships? There's a great tool on the Behavior University called Previous Relationship Detective. In this tool you pretty much figure out what the toxic patterns are that you've described right now, so that you can catch yourself early if you are looking for, if you're trying to avoid that in the future. I'm not sure who said this, but one of my podcast guys said, when I was talking, I think it was Claudia Soul, like an Australian relationship expert. She said something interesting. She said, Daniel, you're gonna meet the same person over and over again until you have fixed the root cause of your trauma. And the idea basically behind that statement was that until you are no longer compatible with the kind of person you no longer wish to attract, you will keep running into them. And I thought that was very interesting. So in the previous relationship detective exercise, you go over all the relationships that you have and write case studies about the partners, discover what they had in common, and also discover who you were with those kinds of particular individuals, and see how you could be in the future, so that you would spot these people and you would spot yourself if you follow your own patterns. Okay, I have to wrap it up shortly here. I hope you gained something valuable from this first Q&A of mine. I will do some more in the future, so keep those questions sending to hello@diankarim.com, or put them in the comments, or write them to me on my social media channels. It's like @DianKarim at Instagram, or Behavior University at Instagram, or behavioruniversity.com as a domain. Thank you so much for investing your precious intention into conversing with me over this technological way. I'm very grateful you sent me those questions. I hope that you find something interesting in regards to them, and I'm looking forward to provide you more in the future with resources, tools, stories and content and psychological expert interviews that will help you to make this special life of yours your masterpiece. I believe in you. See you next time.